Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I'm joined by Jess.
Hello, world.
And Alex.
Happy New Year, really, really late.
And it is. I mean, it's only a couple weeks late after the new year, but we're all
It's the thought
here.
that counts.
First time I was able to say it to our listeners that have been, they really feel like they're really there now that we welcomed and wish them Happy New Year.
It's official.
Happy New Year.
How long can you say that?
2023.
Like what? How long? Because I was at a store
Until December
yesterday.
31st, 2023. Still the new year.
And then I was at a store yesterday and like.
Okay, that was funny.
That was like the greeting from, or after I purchased something, like the lady was like, Happy New Year. And I'm like, how long can you say Happy New Year? Is it a week? That's going to be my take. Like after a week.
Okay.
I ruined it, technically.
Yeah, I was just going to say you just...
Happy New Year. I mean, you could say it, I would say maybe it's like a per person. Like if it's the first time I've seen you in the new year. Yeah. So if I don't see you till like August, I should still be able to say.
There is a time where it like expires. I don't know if it's the end of January.
Yeah.
I don't. For me, it's. I'm going to say a
it.
week.
A week after
even if somebody sees me January 8th and they're like Happy New Year, I'm going to be like, what?
You're going to be mad at
You're
them.
just going to like.
Expired.
What are you going to say back?
So I just was a hypocrite, basically.
So if
my hypocrisy is
it's spreading,
and it's to myself, and I want you all to know.
So you see somebody like January 11th. And they say Happy New Year. It's this like cute little lady checking you out at the grocery store. What are you going to say back? Thank you?
Thank you. I'd probably say Happy New Year back if it's that scenario. But
you wouldn't come up with something else?
No, I would not. See you next
fall. I think
fall.
you should, though, because you're very capable of coming up with the new.
Just be like, it's a little late, lady. Get with the program. We've been in 2023 for 2 weeks. Do we have any voicemails?
We do. We have a voicemail.
Hopefully,
while I'm pulling that
first
up,
voicemail of the new year.
Can you remind us how the number? I gotta.
Yeah.
I didn't have it
if
open.
anyone wants to call and leave a voicemail, which it's our new favorite thing, 402-885-9930. Get a pencil right now and a pen. Write it on your hand, on your arm, wherever you can. On I don't know, your child's forehead. 402-885-9930. Whatever you got, write that number down and commit it to memory. Did I stall long enough?
Stalled. Here it is. Here it is.
Right.
Hi, CCC podcast. I have an uncomfortable question, and that is, when you are addressing someone with a title, when do you know when to use that title, and when do you not use that title? Someone like the Queen of England, or now King, you would always call them King. Our mayor, everyone always calls mayor by their last name, but I have noticed some of your guests on your show, like the esteemed Dr. Pagan Camper, some of you are comfortable calling him by his first name. And true also of Dr. Wendell Nelson. He often is called by his first name and not doctor that he has earned the title for. So I'm interested to know, is that a level of comfort, or how do you decide when to call them by their title and when to call them by their first name? Look forward to the banter.
I was waiting for like an answer. I was waiting to get reprimanded there, but that didn't come. Okay. You guys any answers?
I think it is a fair question. Probably not one that like you ask aloud a lot, but for me, it's weird sometimes even to me. Like Dr. Pagan Kemper was literally worked at, all of us had a relationship before he worked at Christ Community. Like he was the dean of the college that I went to, and Jess, and I know you worked with him, Eric. And so for me, I kind of always called him that. And then he was just kind of like, all right, it's Carl, So usually that for me is like I will always go with the more respectful earned title, even in pastoral kind of ministry. But personally, like if someone calls me Pastor Alex, rarely am I like,
Pastor Ely,
please keep calling me that. Like I'm like, hey, no, it's cool. It's Alex. And so, but for me, I usually err on calling him maybe that title, or even like Mr. and Mrs. I feel like a lot of times for like my friends, even that they're grown adults, their parents, it's usually Mr. and Mrs. until there's that permission or invitation given by the other person. And there's still some people, like my childhood pastor, I don't think I could ever call him. I almost feel if I say his first name aloud that I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And so like instantly, and that was kind of the culture of that church, is like, that's reverence and honor, and to not call somebody that is dishonor. And that's kind of how I was raised. And so there's a part of me that's like, there's certain people that I never could not call by a title, but I don't know. That's kind of my answer.
I think that's fair. I think too, it's what the caller said. It's a level of comfortability. So I feel like with Carl, if you literally walked up to Carl and said, "Are you friends with Jess Holly?" he would say yes. And I feel like we have like the friend relationship.
Wow.
I think he would absolutely would say that.
I don't know if I'm there.
Oh yeah, I think you guys would be. But I'm saying like that when I'm referring to him as Carl, like that, it's a friend. Like it's a more familiar, I guess, like especially like when we're talking around a table. I would say that especially if we have a new guest that we haven't interacted with, and if I'm interacting with somebody in the world that I haven't interacted with before, I usually ask like, what do you prefer that I call you? Like, what do you want me to call you? Especially if I know they have a title. And so maybe there's an assumption that we haven't had that conversation as we're talking to people on the podcast, but I think there's that level of comfortability. And then I'm even thinking of like aunt and uncles, like in our family, like my brothers and sisters don't prefer to be called aunt and uncle. Like they each have like a nickname.
Yeah.
Which that's probably for another day to share, but
it feels like it's changed. It's made a shift because like I remember being an uncle when I was like in the first or second grade and being like, "Oh, don't call me uncle. That's weird." Like, as the older I got, that just sounded strange. But, and similar to Alex's experience growing up in a very charismatic Pentecostal church, everyone in the organization, you addressed everyone as brother and sister, no matter what their title was, other than pastors or deacons or whatever. But so there were people that later on in life, my parents would refer to them by their first name, and I had no idea who they were talking to because I always only knew brother and sister Jacobs or brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so. Like that's all I knew just because that's the language we used. And so it was such a weird, and now I hear people say that and I'm like, oh, that's strange. What are you, part of a cult or something? And it's just like, that was the way we talked. That was just, and still to this day, if we reference certain people from that era, you have to almost reference them that way because nobody knows what you're talking about.
You can't not attach it to, and I do think like, obviously if we have Wendell or Carl on here, like I think to the crowd or whatever, like anytime I think Carl's on here, I could be wrong. People could fact check it. I think we always would be like, hey, we're joined today by Dr. Carl Pengamper, because I think there is that, because it does bring, to especially those that might not be in a relationship with him, that kind of dialogue. But I assume there's people that call our mayor, there's pockets of people that she's just like, no, call me this. But I would call her, Mayor Stothert. Like that's just how I would address her if I met her, because I don't have that relational kind of equity, happening there.
And I think titles are important. I mean, I even think back, it was a year or two ago when we called everyone pastor. We would say Pastor Mark, and then we switched to Minister Mark. Like it's important for us to like why that title was chosen and why that switch was made. And then for us, it was like very intentional that we put that into our language and like recognizing people. But as Alex, like I'm pretty sure you would consider me your friend. But it's like I probably wouldn't call you Minister Alex
or Reverend
or Pat or anything.
Yeah, you haven't.
Your Highness. Like I just wouldn't.
We should set the record straight about one thing. We will always call him Producer Austin.
Yeah, producer.
Amen.
He will always be Producer Austin. Just Austin's here. So
we do call him that.
Mr. Producer
on and
Austin.
Off air. That's just what we call him. So
that's
a fun fact
Austin.
about the podcast.
Brother Austin. Okay. Well, I hope
that's a good question. I appreciate
it really
those.
is.
Yeah. I do think it's just a personal thing. If you know someone, it's probably safe to.
And it's something that we don't, always think about.
But then that makes me wonder about Mr. and Mrs. Is that something? Should we be more formal? Should we until we,
I mean, we call. Never mind.
And there's settings too. Like I'm thinking, like I'm gonna do a funeral, or if I do a wedding, that intentionally because I'm a minister or pastor or whatever, Someone is literally calling that number right now.
That's incredible.
Someone is calling
the podcast.
That would be fun if we answered it.
Literally right now.
They're leaving a voicemail. They thought of us.
That would have been fun to answer it live.
That would have been wild. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so like there's times where like if I'm doing a funeral or something like that where I need to be in a ministry mode or whatever, like it's comforting to people to know, okay, a pastor's here or a minister's here, or like when I go into like a prison, or things like that. Mm-hmm. So there's times where I think the title is definitely useful for sure.
All right. Well, let us know in the comments if you always default to that or if you're brave and bold and, go on a first name basis with everyone.
I'm excited for the next voicemail.
Yes. Someone is leaving us one as we speak. And if you need that number again, it's 402-885-9930. All right. Up next, we're going to be talking about TikTok. Have you heard about this thing? It's some app that the kids are using. It's a video thing. I don't know. It's kind of like the YouTubes. But we are going to be having a discussion about it, and that's happening right about now. So stay tuned. Today we're talking about TikTok. How many of you thought it was spelled Ticktalk when you first heard it? Or do you know because you saw the app before you heard it?
I think I saw the app before.
I would say I saw it.
I mean, I think maybe, I definitely didn't think T-A-L-K. I might have thought it like T-I-C-T-O-K.
Like TikTok, like a clock.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
What did you think?
I don't remember. I feel like I saw the app in the trending in the App Store before I heard it ever mentioned. So, anyways, TikTok. Let's start off with this headline. This headline is coming from NBC News.
And what TikTok is?
Oh yeah, do you not know TikTok?
What is TikTok?
TikTok. Let me explain.
There may be someone that has never.
TikTok
and we just want to know.
A video app, social media app, where anyone can post, and you somewhat organically run across these. You swipe up. You just keep swiping forever. It never stops. There's new videos, new ideas, new thoughts, recipes, dances. Yeah. There's
old, young.
Trending sounds, which those are the sounds that are played in the background, and you can click the little spinning circle that looks like a record down in the corner to see who's using those trending sounds. Yeah.
And like any other social media platform has evolved. I mean, it started mostly with shorter form video, and I think it's grown to a little longer form. Like they've
up to 10 minutes now.
Yeah. And so it's
wasn't it Musically? It was called Musically originally, and it was just about dancing to music, and then it morphed into TikTok.
Doing dances,
And I think it really saw an explosion during the pandemic because people were just posting talking head videos and different things like that.
And lots of celebrities use it to post.
You can discover
short videos.
A lot of different bands. I've discovered so many different bands and recording artists just through that. Anyways,
so it's just for videos. It's
mainly
not,
you're not posting pictures. Well, they're trying. They have some beta stuff out there where it'll post like a carousel thing, and you can swipe through photos.
Or they've tried to kind of steal the Be Real
thing,
which we talked about a few weeks
ago. So
they're
experimenting, but mostly video. So this headline came from NBCnews.com, and it said their colleges banned TikTok over security fears. These students vow it won't stop them from scrolling. So several states have banned TikTok on state-owned devices and networks, affecting some students at public universities. So this would pretty much mean if you went, I don't know which schools these are specifically, University of Oklahoma and Auburn University in Alabama officially announced this. But if you're on the campus Wi-Fi, you won't have access to TikTok. So I guess you turn it over to LTE or 5G and you're fine. But this seems to be an ongoing topic, because even not too long ago, there was, several times there's been talks of the America banning TikTok from the App Store or whatever. And that doesn't seem to play through. What are your thoughts on this? Is it a risk? Are we giving away too much information?
I was just going to add it in this article. It also said that the universities had their own TikTok channels and they deleted those as well.
Oh, wow.
In an effort to
that's a commitment to it. Is everyone here on TikTok? I mean, do you use it? Or
I'm on TikTok for sure. I very rarely log into my own account. As you know, Eric, you send me messages sometimes or share videos with me, and then I ghost you because I am usually logged into the churches and don't check it very often.
Because the church is on TikTok.
Yes.
At CCC Omaha.
A little plug there. Jess, are you on TikTok?
I am on TikTok. I don't have that many videos, but
you watch a lot of videos.
I do. Would say.
Yeah. The novelty originally of TikTok was that it was just this constant stream of content. You never knew what was coming up next. And it does something to your brain chemistry in a way that just these dopamine hits of it's really hard to pull away from sometimes because you'll just lose. You can literally lose hours to it.
And there's actual like psychological research, which Alex, you probably know some about this too, where a certain amounts of videos with certain times, like the ability to scroll through, like it makes you lose track of time, or it keeps you focused on one thing. So there's science behind originally like the amount of time that they were allowing like a video to continue to stream, because it's never ending. Because then all of a sudden you get to start over again and over again. So much so that there is something, I think even from the TikTok account, that after you scrolled for a certain amount of time, the algorithm actually sends you a video that's like, okay, it's late, or you've been scrolling for a while now, maybe it's time to take a break.
Yeah.
Because of it's never ending. I mean, and it takes over your whole screen, so you can't see your battery life or what time it is. And I've gotten lost a time or two.
Yeah.
I'll admit it.
That is true. It is weird because I've gotten better about it, but there were times when I first kind of got really into the app where I would just like lose way too much time, and I'd see the thing that tell you to stop scrolling, and I'd be like, don't tell me what to do, and I would scroll past them and keep going. But gotten much better, gotten my habit under control.
Let me get on my high horse and say I've never seen that.
Oh, you haven't?
I haven't. But, but that is not
true.
To even say that
you've said that.
Haven't spent way too much time on that.
I don't think you've spent enough because you haven't seen that. So you really don't know. The algorithm doesn't know you well enough
I have been sucked into binging things that probably were not productive outside of TikTok, and so I will also.
So you've been doing
that.
Other things while Eric and I are.
So. But no, I didn't know that existed until someone mentioned it at one point. I'm like, oh wow, that's like I was kind of like, how have I not? Because I don't know what that amount of time is. So
I really don't know either. I don't know if I want to know. So yeah, this is kind of interesting. It seems to be a lot of these conversations around security risks with TikTok, and because it is a Chinese-owned company, and that they are taking information, or even that they are potentially manipulating American society. There's because I think Alex, before the show, we had talked about, we'd kind of seen the same thing, that if you're in China and you're on TikTok, the content you see is going to be so different because it's regulated so much. So you're only seeing high-level educational content and Chinese nationalism type content, and that's it. And so there's some people who claim that, I mean, at this point it's a conspiracy theory, but that they, are intentionally trying to dumb down Americans by serving up maybe less educational content.
Or China has regulations on their videos, and America is kind of free for all. Like you can pretty much post whatever.
Yeah, that's across the board, essentially.
Yeah,
for most platforms, it would seem. So, but it does sound like it. Like I watched that video, and I think most videos that are done well and persuasive enough around things like that, you're like, oh, brilliant.
Yeah,
like it would seem to make sense in some kind of ways. And I think one of the things I also just to mention, because in December we had a conversation or a series here at the church about just technology and our use and digital landscape. And so just a reminder, we have this resource called Axis, which I think for me it's a great parent resource, but outside of just parents, like if you're wondering about some of these things, we're not going to probably cover everything, but it has a lot of, from a biblical Christian perspective, a lot of tools and ways to have those conversations with your kids, and it explains even more than we did what TikTok is, how it morphed from Musical.ly and all that kind of stuff. So if you really want to know background information, I would say I would recommend that. What was the actual web? cccomaha.org/digital. If you go to that, you can go find a free access membership, it's just great. So, and one of the things that I found helpful from because I always would prefer leading with the redeemable, side. And one of the things that it noted when I was reading like the parent guide was TikTok is a product of two desires that God gave us to create and to be in community. And so I think that's true. And I think for a lot of us, that's where, social media pulls us in, and they are God-given desires to create, because TikTok is very much a creator's playground in some ways, and it's a place to go find community. And so I do think why we like these things, why we're attracted to it, is because we're wired by God at some level for those things.
Yeah,
and
for
so
connection.
It's important to know that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think as you scroll through it, you see less of this because it's gotten so big. But I remember early on, some of my favorite things about TikTok were just like the inside jokes. Like something would trend, and then it would you'd see someone else stitch it or add to it or, whatever, and just keep building on this inside joke. And it felt like you were kind of part of the club if you got to that point, and you'd see some video and you would get that reference. It would be funny to you, and you'd show it to someone else and they'd look at you like you had lost your mind because why is this funny? But some of that's gone away. I think the bigger it's gotten, and but it's also you can tell how smart it's getting. I'm surprised because it's feeding up topics and things like that I wouldn't think I wanted to know about or I would normally be interested in. I'm just like, it's a, anytime there's a new technology, I think people tend to meet that with skepticism and fear. And also, it is the modern day magic. So we go, oh, it's reading my mind. How is it reading my mind? Or it's listening to me. Or how is it doing that? And really, it's just really good algorithms and AI and technology in general. It's able to understand our patterns and, because we're probably a little more simplistic than we want to admit a lot of times, that it's creating a profile on us. And that's how these things work. They create a profile and they serve up content that we would like, and they know that because there's other people out there like us. But yeah, it is an incredible time suck. A lot of times when it comes to this privacy stuff, I tend to be pretty lax on that. I don't get as worried about it. Maybe I should. I know people are very adamant about it being dangerous. Is that something you guys have fear over when you use the app, that you're giving up your privacy, giving up information? Not because we do it all the time, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, or even signing up for retail apps or things like that.
Right. Even you asking it, it's like I'm thinking well, should I care more? Should I be more aware? Is it tracking my location? But then at the same time, it's the new shiny thing that's happening, especially with our kids today. But exactly to your point, when I'm, logging in and ordering groceries and I'm telling this app where I'm going to pick up my groceries, it's learning things about me too. It's learning. Yeah. And so how much am I giving up when I even think signing, having a YouTube account.
Yeah.
And if I like something or subscribe, there's so much information being generated towards us. I guess for me, I see it as that, it's the new shiny thing that we have right now. And so I don't necessarily always get super concerned.
Well, we've become very accustomed to giving up something for something. It's we're not paying for it necessarily. It seems free, but we're just kind of okay with this unspoken agreement that we've made with social media.
Right. And not to, and I don't think it's a bad, I'm not saying this in a negative way when I say it, but I think my parents and our generations before are very cautious. And so looking at us, my generation, me, it's why are you letting him do that? I mean, my dad even said, I got a new phone this last week, and he was don't send that back in before you wipe the phone because there's information on you on it. And just I think it's a healthy caution that comes, but to at least to my parents, sometimes it feels kind of reckless, where I didn't think about it. But it is something where we're
Yeah.
It's more in our lives.
Yeah.
We had some friends over during the holiday break between Christmas and New Year's, and my friend works at Amazon, and so there's moments I have panic. He came in, he's like, "Oh, you answered the door, and the Ring camera saw me, and it heard my name, and so now it can associate my name with my face." And he literally he works at Amazon, like on this stuff, and so he's like all of those things are creating like a digital profile of essentially where you go, what your name is, how you travel, and it's all, And so there's moments where like I hear that and I'm like, I get in panic mode. I'm like,
Alexa's
get rid of it all.
Yeah.
Get rid of it all, like, because that at its core is scary. But then there's also moments where I'm like, well, no, this is convenient. Like this is serving me, and it's just so hard at different times to figure out and to wade that. And a lot of the trust is, and I think this is where it gets difficult, is the capability of what it can do and what you're trusting the ethic, I guess, of these companies to not actually take advantage of those things at some level. And it seems like more and more, for better or for worse, the government's stepping in and trying to at least put some kind of regulations around.
Which they're like the most unqualified to do it so many times because they don't understand it at all.
Correct.
So they're coming at it from even less understanding than the average user of it. They're like, what's a TikTok? Oh, that sounds bad. Ban it.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, you're right.
But it does seem like in some ways, I mean, obviously we have to be reactionary to it because it's just moving at such a fast pace.
Yeah.
That there seems to be some kind of hopefully regulations, and tech companies we've talked about a little bit, like, are, I think, seeing the wake of maybe some of the decisions they made to help people in general, but then they're like, wow, okay, we need to create new privacy settings. That's been a huge thing for Apple and Google, I think, lately, or create these moments or these times where people can learn to zone out. And it seems like what you guys were saying, that TikTok even recognizes that at some level, and that's why they kind of have that built in their algorithm of something saying, hey, and we could tie it to mental health. We can tie it to a lot of things, but it seems like overall the tech community is realizing this, and whether that's pandering to or not, like, I think hopefully we're walking a good
I think it's tough
place.
to say because I think a lot of times big corporations like oil companies will put out ads to say, save the oceans and things like that, where they're the ones that are responsible for damaging it the most. And so I feel like sometimes it is pandering because they can do that and then try to admonish themselves of the sin that they're committing by saying, oh, we care, but really we don't. And I think it's a scary thought to think that this generation could be the one known for trading in all of our privacy for convenience. And I mean, we've been giving it away all the time with phones, and I'm guilty of it. I don't know how many Echo Dots I have in my house, but they're listening all the time. And, so it is just one of those things where we don't know the real outcome of this. So much of this stuff is so young and new to us. We don't know really the repercussions of it. And I don't say that to be, fear-mongering.
Right.
But I do think there's probably a healthy amount of skepticism that can be there, and we should look at it with a little bit of skepticism. But I know I use it. It's become one of the most used social media platforms for me, and I'm just mostly a consumer. I rarely post on it, but yeah.
You want cheaper gas? You can come to download our app. I mean, like, so many companies just use that outside of the social networking to figure out your patterns so they can, essentially get you to use their product and make you the product. And it is such a, you can find a lot of fear in it. And so it is something I think for everybody and we had a whole series on this, so go back and listen.
Which on the flip side, Apple has done a lot on their devices to cut some of that privacy stuff off, which has hurt Facebook's business, hurt their bottom line a lot. Advertisers are feeling it because they aren't able to target people as well. So there is some privacy stuff that is, you can, I don't know how much you want to trust it, because then on the other side, people are saying, well, Apple just is trying to build a monopoly so they can start advertising to you.
Yeah. And they can use their data for themselves. And
so who knows?
The ethic of it all is just one of those things that I think our kids, the next generation, are really going to have to wrestle through a lot.
Right. And there kind of is a point too of we don't understand everything, and so it's like, what are we choosing to give up? And I think that's where the kind of the push and shove comes, because we each have our own freedoms. Like, you can choose what you post or you don't post, or you can choose what security settings you have or I don't have. But that's kind of a lot of responsibility that each of us as individuals have. So part of me, like, in thinking about it, is like, okay, do I want my 13-year-old to have all of that responsibility of like post? I mean, and maybe that's making it too much of like a responsibility, but it's part of like who you are, and there's a freedom that's there. It feels kind of ambiguous because each of us could have different standards that we have for that.
So for us, if CCC, for example, because it's, you know, our employer and they have a Wi-Fi and internet that we use, if they said, hey, for security purposes, it's not TikTok or whatever is not allowed on our network. Like, you could try to go there and it's not going to work. I mean, that kind of is maybe what's happening to these colleges. How would we feel like that's going too far? Would we feel like, yeah, I'll just jump on my LTE? What would your thought on that be? Or if City Care was like, all right, this is just not allowed anywhere on our network, do you think they're overreaching at that point as a private organization, or do they have the right to do that? What do you think? Like, because that's some of the complaint, I think, from some of the students.
Yeah.
I think I'd want to know why.
Yeah.
I think we always ask that question, why?
And I feel like at a college it's a little different because you're paying so much to be there and live there, and that's your whole access to the internet is if you're on campus, you know, all of that's there. Where at your employer, it's a little different of an arrangement. And so I'd probably be I'd probably be annoyed and be like, where's the data to prove that this is actually a problem? Do you know that, or are you just reacting to something you heard? But yeah, I don't know. I think I'd be less. I can understand why students would be more frustrated with this, because this is their full-time access to the internet is at this. They live and go to school and all day long they're on this network. Yeah. And so I feel like it's a little bit different, but an employer, I think, has more of a right to decide what is allowed on their network.
Yeah. I mean, I know we went to, like, at Grace, and we've mentioned that before, obviously, but like there were certain shows, right? Like we had cable, but you were not allowed to watch certain channels, you know.
But you had to self-police your...
self-police it, or your RA would police it for you. And there was obviously there was other things that you were not allowed to go to. Obviously, like porn sites and things like that were, you know, being policed there. And so it becomes one of those things of probably these institutions making some decisions of like, how are we protecting the student body as a whole. But even when we were
at starting school, we were there when Facebook was introduced at a college campus.
Like, I remember requesting.
I remember us having to ask to be on Facebook and that whole
of Facebook
era happening. Yeah,
for Grace
Facebook.
University to have our own network.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're getting a little off topic there with all the other social medias. We're talking about TikTok here.
And we're just old.
And
we're going back to our...
like, I mean, young people are using this a lot. I know then you see but I mean, speaking of other social medias, you know, Instagram has Reels, YouTube now has Shorts, which it's the same format, somewhat short form video that you're scrolling through.
And I think I thought about this because it was the way that you connected to people. Like, that was part of, like, when I bringing up Facebook, it's like that was part of community and that was part of posting. And I see this as kind of the next thing of this is how people are connecting and finding community. And for that, outside of a security issue, I can empathize with a teenager wanting that, or a college student, whoever, adults.
Which, to be fair, that is the change that's happening. Facebook was about connecting with friends and family, where TikTok's about connecting with strangers. And that, I think, and that's where you're seeing companies like Facebook and Instagram start to change. That's why you're not seeing your friends post as much, and they're not seeing yours as much, because they're starting to prioritize more organic content instead of just what you and your friends are posting. and you're going to continue to see that shift, I think, and that's, I mean, even from the church social media account, we see less and less interaction on posts that we make, just because the algorithm isn't feeding that out to people. But I know, speaking of like my kids have access to YouTube. I know, the other night I heard my son very upset from his room, and he was crying, and I was like, what in the world's going on? And I went to check on him, and he has access to YouTube Shorts, and he has like a minor account, so I have parental rights on it, and stuff still gets through. But he ended up watching a video of a vet going through the process of putting a dog to sleep, and the dog's there and everything. He's showing me the video, and it just disturbed him so much, rightfully so. And I mean, we recently had to put our dog down, and that was a whole thing. I mean, that we as a family we were grieving through, and so I think that coupled with that, like, hit him extra hard. And and I'm trying to talk to him about it, but I know most people would say they're curious people. I think a lot of people are curious. I know I'm a very curious person, probably abnormally so, where I have to know. If I hear even an inkling of something, I have to understand it. I need to know more about it. And I know my son is the same way. And so it's like, I asked him, I said, well, why'd you watch that? And I mean, I knew that was a dumb question, but I kind of just wanted to get him talking. He wasn't really wanting to talk about it, but he just kind of alluded to the fact that he just couldn't look away. He saw the setup to the video and wanted to see it through, and then didn't realize the repercussions of watching all of that, and what he would feel and how he would feel, and what, And I think that's maybe where the dangers of something like TikTok, because you'd never know what's going to come around the corner, what you're going to see, or even the introduction of new ideas. We've talked about deconstructionism on here, and people are leaving the faith, and a lot of that has been fueled by things like TikTok. For better or for worse, these people are sharing ideas and thoughts, and like, at my core, I struggle to fight against that, because I love the idea that people are learning and discovering things and understanding things better, because I think that makes us better people when we actually understand what we're talking about and not just react in fear. But you can see also why people are up in arms about it, and why they're fearful about it, why they're so protective, because it's a lot to control. It's a lot. People are changing their lives, making decisions about what they believe, a lot more than just fun dances and crockpot recipes.
Yeah, and it can give you this illusion of maybe stardom or influence that can happen in a negative way. Like, I think, like a Kanye West example, or I've seen other examples like that, where people are kind of just going crazy, and they're like, Kanye is one of those examples, and he gets on platforms, and people continue to platform him, and most people aren't watching like out of I'm rooting for you. They're watching because they're like, there's that curiosity. This is a train wreck. What's gonna happen? And so then Kanye like sees, I'm getting all these clicks and all this kind of stuff, and like, people are liking it, and so you can just kind of write whatever story you want about an algorithm, but people are going to watch just a train wreck. It's just that curiosity. And so it's sad, because then it puts people in a vicious cycle of feeling like, this is good influence, this is better influence. And in some ways, like, you actually get a bigger crowd and a more consistent crowd when you're in your demise, rather than like at the peak.
Well, in the algorithm, it prioritizes divisive content. I mean, that's not maybe intentional, but when somebody has a divisive opinion and they put it out there, it leads to more comments and more debates in the comment section, which then tells the algorithm this is popular content. People are commenting, where that really works well when it's something that is separating people and people are arguing and fighting. And they didn't, I think there's been developers who've talked about that and said, we didn't realize necessarily that's what we were creating when we did that.
And even thinking, consuming that, we don't think about how scrolling, and maybe we get lost in someone's demise, and then we wonder hours later why we're having a bad day, or why we're having a negative outlook, or maybe why I notice that I'm feeling more depressed or whatever it could be. Mm-hmm. And so we have to choose what we consume, or be at least conscientious of that, whether it's like, what do you think, like setting a boundary, or like these are things I'll watch, these are things that I just know I'm gonna like swipe over. I think
I try. I mean, I think we all probably have like a somewhat of a moral guideline where you like, I see something, I'm just gonna scroll past that immediately. Like I'm not, like on TikTok, if it's sexually suggestive or something like that, I'm like, oh, okay, let's just scroll. But I mean, you can see that there's an easy allure to it too. And I just to go back a little bit, I think if you look at a timeline, you can probably see a progression of, okay, our generation and younger, we're told we could be anything, and we're the most performative generation. We want to put all the information out there. So then we were given social media to be stars in our own eyes. Our friends and family could like our posts or whatever, and then we'd have all these friends and all this influence, whatever. But now it's changing to where it's just about platforming people and presenting just random people. So even more than ever now, anybody can be this quote unquote star or celebrity and make a name for themselves. And we've seen success stories over and over again. So I think the allure is there and the proof is there that it works. But then there's something in between where there's more people out there who are just posting content all the time that nobody's seeing.
Yeah.
And they're not growing. They're not, and that's the majority, but TikTok, when it came around, it kind of flipped it on its head, where it was showing the little people's content, and more people were seeing it and relating to it. And so
I think even in Omaha, like Elise Myers is one of the most, and she was probably one of those people you're describing in some way, like gal from the Midwest,
told funny,
marketing,
funny
stories that people are like, oh yeah, me too. Like I've been there. And now like, she's blown up. Like she's one of the most influential.
Shouts out to Elise if you want to be on the podcast.
We would love to have you and just talk about your journey. But it's just fascinating.
I'm sure she's listening.
Because she for sure is listening. Maybe we'll get a voicemail from her soon. Yeah. But so I think it's just because previously, like someone in their living room with a phone, becoming famous, that doesn't seem like it makes any kind of
sense.
sense.
When you said that, I was just imagining a rotary phone.
It probably couldn't happen.
The impossible feel possible.
Right.
When you see people have success and how close you are to it through scrolling through something.
Well, and I think that's the part where it's a bit of a conundrum for like parents who are hearing their kids talk about being YouTube stars or influencers on whether it's TikTok or whatever. That can't be a real career path, right? Well, no, you're not going to be in the top percentage. But there's a lot of people who are able to make a living. Maybe it's more modest than the, Mr. Beast or whatever. But I think there is a viable route for people to make a living on these platforms. But then again, that stuff can change on the drop of a hat, and you could lose your job technically.
So let's talk about what our favorite, like what do you have a favorite creator or a favorite thing that you like that you like to find on TikTok? I'll just go first.
Okay.
One of my favorite things lately it's called Cart Narcs.
I've seen this, yes.
And like I discovered, like I wasn't searching for it. Like I was just on there, and then it was one of those things that fed me, and I'm like, yes, I am like the person that hates when people don't put their carts back away. And like I was almost jealous because I'm like, I couldn't get away with doing this.
Yeah.
Like probably just because of my job and things like that.
Pastor Alex Cartnark.
Yeah. Like, so this guy just goes around and he gives, he finds people that didn't put their cart back, calls them out on it. And, he's got like a whole outfit on. And he says it doesn't work for any of the stores. And then he gives them a chance to, what he says, be a good human and put their carts back. And a lot of times they'll fight with him. Sometimes if they offer to put it back, then he'll just say, no, since you made the right choice after making the wrong choice, I'll go put the cart away for you. But it's fascinating. Just
some people get very mad, though, like almost violent.
And one of the things he does is puts magnets on their car that's like, I'm a lazy bones or lazy, So then they get mad at him, like, you can't touch my car, and he's like, well, your cart could have touched someone's car, and like it's just So anyway,
so that's
it's like,
what you're doing well.
But to me, it's like partly, I don't know, vicariously living through this person, Sebastian, I think is his name, Agent Sebastian, and like to me, I'm like, okay, that's pretty humorous entertainment. It. Could I call it wholesome? I don't know, but is he making the world a better place? I hope so.
One
People need to
cart
put
at
their
a
carts
time.
away.
Yeah.
You know,
one call out at a time.
Jimmy Darts is that.
That's
for
what
me.
I was gonna say. I love Jimmy Darts.
Like watching him just, hey, take this mystery box or stuff, and the people that will engage with him are saying, he'll try to get them to finish the lines to a song, like you're happy and you know it, whatever. And
then he'll normally give them
like
either pay for something or money.
And then you get to hear their story and watch these people just go, you do not know how much I needed. I mean, it's so heartwarming. It feels wholesome. I don't know. There's probably some gray area there where it's manipulating people a little bit, but
it feels like you can contribute to it, like a different kind of GoFundMe thing, because he has,
like, he'll put their Venmo.
Yeah, and that's how he originally started. Now I think more brands are jumping on and like paying the money towards people, but like he started basically crowdfunding all this money and just going around as a guy, hey, I'm going to go bless people. And so people would just give, $10 a month or randomly to him being able to give cash and make people's day. So there are like those bright spots that are, Jimmy Darts he's great.
He's good. So good.
Jess.
I like Jimmy Darts.
No, there's got to be another. I know there's a crock pot recipe.
I do. I mean, I have found, like, that's my thing, is like the subconscious, like even me, like it's embarrassing to say, but like I've definitely watched
crock pot patty.
I've definitely watched recipes on TikTok and then like had my grocery app open and like added the ingredients and then gone back days later and like, why did I put that? Oh, it was a video, and I probably sent it to somebody. So, but I have, I mean, seriously, one of the best crock pot recipes I have come across to date, I found on TikTok last month.
What dish is it?
It's easy, so I can say it real quick if you want.
Why? Okay, sure.
What do you want me to do?
I just want to know what it was. Like, what's the dish?
You use the garlic Parmesan dressing from Buffalo Wild Wings. You buy it, and it makes like this pasta dish. It is so delicious with all the ingredients.
So like chicken and pasta.
Chicken, and then you dip. Okay, like 4 chicken breasts, and then you take a whole bottle of the wings, the Buffalo Wild Wings garlic Parmesan. You dump that in there. Fill that container.
Parmesan. Yep.
Garlic Parmesan. You fill that back up with heavy whipping cream. Ooh, shake it. Dump it in. And then you put a block of cream cheese.
Oh, okay. This is
baby.
Really
I know. Keep going.
Okay, I'm just
and then
adding
the
calories.
Wait for it. And then you take a bag of Parmesan cheese. We're not talking about calories here.
I know.
Like,
I'm just adding them.
Get your judgment out of here. It's good. And then you take a bag of Parmesan cheese and put it over.
No, all good food is like that. It's just like so rich.
On low for 8 hours.
Oh, wow. That's a long.
And then you make some penne pasta at that time. Shred it all up and then stir in the pasta. I'm telling you, you'd be on the ground.
On the ground.
You would be.
You would love it.
You would be on the ground and not.
I'm telling you, it's
you would
good.
not be on the toilet for like.
If anybody needs the link, just message the podcast and I'll send it over.
I wasn't saying I was counting the calories in a judgy way, but I'm like, whoa, I mean, more maybe not the calorie, but like the richness, because you're like talking.
I know, but
Parmesan
you gotta
and
trust.
heavy whipping cream.
You gotta trust.
And then a block of cream cheese.
I'm
just like
all the best stuff.
You just gotta get the judgment out, sweep it out the door, and it's really good. I honestly, genuinely, the pasta kind of like blends it all out.
All right,
I'm telling you,
there it is. That's so.
So that's one of many.
So here we are again. This is the crossroads we find ourselves at a lot, I feel like, in these episodes.
How
topic,
would I cook dinner without TikTok?
Well, that, yes. But I mean, it seems like the topic that we're discussing, it ends up in this morally neutral position. And we land here a lot. And I even find myself almost going, okay, what do we talk about? Because it's so, sometimes there's a desire, I think, for people to want to hear us say, well, this is bad or this is good. And again, this is just one of those things where it does land in that kind of morally neutral
And
area.
I think the bigger thing for me, even with this conversation, because we could say, what did we get out of it? people are not having intentional conversations about simple in passing comments that somebody could make. Even with our banter today, you know, what's the title you call somebody? Oh, what's your social, like, people are not stopping and having those conversations. And maybe we're drawing it out a little bit, but I feel like I get a little more understanding.
Yeah.
And I think through, oh, really, how do I feel about it? And that to me is why I would listen, and
helps
why, like,
process.
This is a conversation too that I think a lot of times we have conversations that you can duplicate around your dinner table or at a coffee date or just in having a conversation with somebody, because it's the stuff we don't normally pause and say.
And I think that's why we had the conversation or the message series as a church, because it's one of the biggest discipleship components in all people's lives right now, that it shapes us, whether it shapes us in some way. Not is it all bad, but it shapes us. And it's like that conversation about your son, like, where do you just bring that up? You know, you like, unless you're having a conversation and we're giving people permission to say, this game, I was thinking about this, or I was listening to this thing and someone brought this up. What do you think about that? Like, whether it's the title thing or and so a lot of times I think we don't have those conversations, and it's like, where do we start? And I think giving people permission to think about it, one, because I do think we can get just busy in our life and then we mindlessly do any of this. And then and that's when it becomes dangerous, because we're not even thinking about how we're consuming it. And then it does control us more than we control it. And so there are times I think we have to just stop and realize that this is all new. We're all making it up as we go. And so how is this affecting, like you said, Jess, like, am I watching someone else's train wreck in their life, or am I watching these other people have a bad day? And a TV show can do that for you too. I've talked about The Bachelor, and a lot of people just watch that because it makes you feel better about your life. But sometimes you watch those things and then all of a sudden you're like, man, I'm feeling a lot more anxious lately, or feeling a lot more depressed lately, and I can't get myself out of that cycle. And this feeds more than we know, I think, those cycles. And so unless you actually are able to say, maybe that content in some way is feeding that cycle, could it be? And I think it gives us permission to ask those questions, and how is it affecting our hearts, and you know, the things that Jesus invites us to think about, you know, over and over in Scripture, things that are lovely, pure, right. And so I think it's good for us to think through that.
Yeah. And just one last thing. I think when as a previous consumer of the podcast and then being on the podcast, I think the uncomfortable podcast is not always a uncomfortable, punchy subject. It's the time we spend talking about it. Like, even spending time and really diving into something that just seems like an in-passing thing gets uncomfortable, because, like, I mean, Eric, that it brought out a vulnerable story about your family. Like, it brings out, like, hey, this could be something that I deal with mental health. And I think that also is the beauty, and that's kind of, it all ties into, like, our mission, what we're doing.
I mean, one thing, you mentioned the way it forms us, and that's, I mean, even knowing my kids have access to some of that, it's just wild to me, the wealth of information that they are now. They know so much more than I knew at that age, and I think that can, as a parent, that can be really scary for people to go, like, I don't know what they know. They know so much, and it's one of those things we're going to navigate probably poorly at some point, but maybe it'll make us better, maybe it'll make us worse. I do think it's just how we approach it, and I am always a fan of not approaching things in fear, but understanding. And I think, you know, having these conversations helps.
Yeah. Oh, I think, again, like, we talk about this, and maybe it seems like it's just, of course, you would tag it on, but, like, I think sincerely, like, taking these things to God, you know, like, sincerely asking the Spirit for yourself, not me asking for Eric's sake, but asking for yourself. Hey, how am I doing? How is this affecting me? And, like, just having those honest moments of prayer and spending time with God, or doing an assessment of, like, wait, what do you mean prayer, spending time with God? I don't have time because I'm doing all those other things. And so just saying out loud sometimes gives us that ability to just be honest with ourselves. And that's that's what maybe hopefully on the other end somebody can do. So
yeah, it's all good. All right. Well, that does it for this subject on TikTok. Thanks everybody for listening wherever you are. We always appreciate that. Again, if you want to send in a voicemail, if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss or some banter ideas, you can reach us at 402-885-9930 or reach out to us on social media, whether that's Instagram or TikTok. As we mentioned earlier, we're on TikTok at CCCOMA Podcast, or you can send us an email. We still read those. We still get those at podcast@cccomaha.org. But until next time, we'll talk to you then.